This is the Kubernetes SIG-cluster-lifecycle meeting on Tuesday, the 16th of May, 2017. And I'm going to quickly look up the agenda. How is everyone today?
I think there's other people that chimed in on chat that want to add things to the agenda too.
Okay, great. Can anyone not access the doc? Are people having trouble accessing the doc to add things to the agenda?
I'll put their comment there.
Okay, I can't see any of the chat messages. They might have happened before I joined. Okay, well, so far we have, well, 1.5 agenda items. So Justin, take it away.
Yes, so there's been some discussion about where we are in terms of the etcd operator that was proposed to actually implement the etcd operator. My understanding was that as a group we were waiting on a better understanding of what the etcd operator was and whether it met our needs. But I thought one way we could actually figure that out, it sounds like CoreOS are working on defining what the etcd operator is and what it gives us, but I figure we can take it from the other side and try to figure out together what our requirements are whenever we want to run etcd. How do we want to run etcd? Let's figure out what those things are. Let's figure out then whether the etcd operator gives us those things and which ones it doesn't, what we have to build, and whether it's worth using a vendor's product or whether we should just build our own. So I don't know if anyone has any requirements. I obviously have been thinking of a couple, but they're mostly should run etcd.
I think the first and foremost requirement is that everything that is done this cycle should be listed as experimental, right? Like a parliamentary procedure or some type of process as a SIG that we follow that adheres to the broader space that basically says we have a way of vetting ideas such that we can churn on prototypes, and if it doesn't meet our needs we can expunge them, right? Because I do not envision this being a first class thing in a near term release cycle. I envision it being as, hey, we want to prototype and evaluate it and to see if it works for our needs. And I was not actually Jamie came up and asked on a breakout that we created from the last HA meeting and asked if he could work on this item, and I said, sure, go ahead. So I think we should absolutely encourage the idea of prototypes and pluggability and extensibility, but we definitely do need to have systematic review and requirements as well. So
yeah, I think there's a meta point there, which is kubeadm is, well, SIG-cluster-lifecycle, we're trying to figure out the optimal way to run Kubernetes, right? And there is a danger that people will confuse our experiments with recommendations.
Well, we'll have to be clear then. Anything that's marked.
The question is can we put it into Kate's, or do we have to do it somewhere else, right? If it's an experiment. Bootkube is a great experiment.
Does alpha beta stable not already solve this problem? Sorry?
Are you moving it to beta?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Are you not moving kubeadm to beta?
Yeah, I think the argument there, although maybe not explicitly stated, was that it was a successful experiment.
Oh yeah, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying though, if you move kubeadm to beta, then you can't put alpha stuff into kubeadm, right?
No, that's not true. That exists all across the entire stack, right? So there's alpha, beta, and GA features in every single component in the Kubernetes stack. And this exists all the way from the scheduler to the kube client, right?
Yeah, there's even a table in the latest kubeadm docs. Someone put a table in there for which bits are alpha and beta and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as we are, yeah. I think the status of kubeadm is confusing to me, and I feel like I'm relatively close to it. So I certainly think there'll be confusion, but maybe we continue with defining the requirements, and then it may be that we have no requirements for the sake of a straw man, and or maybe the etcd operator meets our requirements perfectly, and we can just integrate it and we're done, right? So before we worry too much about alpha or beta, let's figure out what we want.
Yeah, makes sense. And to be clear, I don't have a strong opinion on the, like, is alpha, beta, etc. sufficient for demarcating experiments. I just put it out there as an idea. It's not a strong opinion that I hold, but sure. But yeah, so requirements for the etcd operator. I guess first thing, do we have anyone in the room here who knows the etcd operator very well?
Well, this isn't about etcd operator. This is about what we want, right?
Well, I think having a background, I think them talking about it is worthwhile, and then from there we can enumerate pieces of the requirements, right?
Respectfully, I would totally disagree with that. I think the worst thing we can do when we're trying to come up with ideas is to fixate on a particular solution, right? So we need to, what do we want, right? Do we want to throw out etcd? Let's go crazy, right? Should we get rid of etcd, right? Shall we implement our own etcd? Shall we say no HA? Shall we say, let's ideate, or whatever the verb is, right? You don't want to fixate on a particular solution before you understand what we really want. So
yeah, the reason I was asking whether there was anyone in the room who understands it very well is just so that they can listen to begin with, and then perhaps feedback on whether what exists satisfies those requirements. But sure, let's go through requirements then, unless anyone wants to put their hand up to say that yes, they do understand or know or were involved in building the etcd operator.
So both myself and Hong Chao are on the call. So Hong Chao has built most of the etcd operator itself, or a lot of it. And then I've done a lot of work with using it in Bootkube, so we can answer whatever questions.
Cool. Hey, Aaron. Thanks. Okay, so requirements.
So I think there's two very simple ones. The first is to have effectively self-hosted etcd and to have it in some kind of HA form. And I think both of those things can be solved by the etcd operator. Those are my first two that I would suggest.
I'm going to start typing these in. Oh, maybe not.
Just keep going. I'm doing the requirements.
I would say some form of recovery. So I don't think we necessarily need backup in our system because it could be done as an addition, but I think we definitely need the ability to restore from the backup.
So my first question is it the role of the operator or some kind of solution? So if you have like a solution which manages the data store, is it the role of that data store to recover itself? Or do we need a separate component to handle more advanced recovery scenarios? This is like what Justin and I were talking about. I'm not quite sure what like the dedicated role of just an etcd thing should be. I think it should have some kind of basic stuff and then maybe branch out to a more dedicated like operator, to handle more advanced scenarios like that.
So the way that we're structuring it right now is that the etcd operator itself manages making backups, but then the recovery doesn't have to be here, but we've put it into a Bootkube subcommand. So there's Bootkube recover. So right now that just is able to recover from a live etcd, and then what's currently being worked on is being able to recover from an etcd backup specifically for self-hosted etcd. Because if it's not self-hosted, we don't know how you're running etcd. We can't really make assumptions about it. But if we have an etcd backup and we're doing self-hosted, then we can kind of rebootstrap into a self-hosted cluster.
So for example, if I've configured the operator to say backup to S3, and then I rerun that Bootkube command or kubeadm command, will the operator pull from the S3 backup if it exists and use that as a seed, or will it basically try everything again?
Yeah, so right now the assumption is that you are bringing the backup to a node that will be able to recover. And by that, I mean like there's just a kubelet running on it. making the tools smarter and knowing how to source directly from Etsy or S3 or from some other volume. We can do that over time, but the assumption just starts with bring a backup and then use that backup.
I think I'd like to take a step back and like make sure that our requirements aren't slightly myopic. We still want to support existing etcd clusters that are external to the system, right? Because people will come with their own baggage, right? So I think that's absolutely, should be listed as an existing requirement, right? For what it means to support.
I mean, I absolutely agree. I think everyone kind of does. Like that's already what we're doing. I don't think we're getting away from bring your own etcd.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that like, if we're going to be pedantic, let's be pedantic, right?
Another one that might be obvious is that some kind of solution needs to take into account TLS encryption for etcd.
Yeah, I would almost say like that's a first class.
Right.
Like if we're going to do this, if we're going to do security, we should enforce TLS as a default, like encrypted by default.
So those are two high priority things on the etcd operator / self-hosted etcd roadmap. One is which is recovering directly from backup, and the other is supporting TLS in self-hosted etcd clusters. So there are open issues about that in some design documents, but those are really high priority.
And does that include rotation of certificates as well?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Does that include rotation of certificates as well?
It's kind of up in the air, I guess, right now. So there's a couple different options, but that would be the ideal. But it might not be the initial implementation, but over time, yeah, that's the goal.
What about scaling from one node to 3? I think that could be a nice to have because we can implement it using backup and restore, but I put it in as nice to have.
So that works now. So if you're using the etcd operator, if you bootstrap a self-hosted etcd cluster, then it's just a matter of interacting with that third-party resource to scale the etcd cluster like you would any other etcd cluster that you launched using the operator. So you just tell it you want 3 copies and it scales them up. And then right now, what we do, but this is optional, is just we force that to only end up on master nodes using taints and node selectors and such.
Justin, I'd stuck those two under HA because you don't really need TLS or certificate rotation if you're not doing HA.
I moved them just because I thought because of what I'm about to say, which is like, should we redefine or should we drill down into what HA means? I feel like we can always have it on there, and like actually some people just some people want even in the single node case just because it's more secure.
Sure. One other thing before we jump into HA, somebody mentioned in chat upgrades, but I think downgrades is also just as important, right? You need to be able to roll forward and roll backwards. Like if the upgrade fails, you need to be able to get back to a known working state.
But that defies the model, though. Like I think at some point there's, you're putting a requirement onto things. Well, I guess if we want to add it as a nice to have, do you want it as nice to have or an absolute requirement? Because that means changing the model of how etcd operates.
Which part? Upgrades or downgrades?
Downgrades.
I don't know. I think it's hard to run a production system if you can't roll back if something breaks.
Well, there's snapshot and Go ahead, Gia.
I'm Xiang. So for etcd itself, you can downgrade it if you don't upgrade to the next manual version. So for patch version, you can downgrade. So if you want to downgrade to another manual version, you have to do a recovery. That's the limitation of etcd itself. So etcd operator will not help you do anything about it. But like etcd operator will take snapshots, and the current snapshot is version aware. So actually, it can help you to like create a new etcd cluster, and it will get the snapshot for that version. So etcd operator knows about version of the snapshots.
Yeah, I think snapshotting is okay, but snapshotting really only helps you if your upgrade fails immediately, right? If you upgrade and etcd is totally broken, you can restore to a snapshot because you haven't lost any data. If you upgrade and etcd stops working 10 hours or 2 weeks later, and you have no path to go back to a version that actually does work, then I think that's a problem. I know that Matt Liggett at Google worked very closely with the CoreOS guys when we did the etcd 2 to etcd 3 upgrade path to make sure we had a downgrade procedure. I think it was a little bit hackish and somewhat manual, but there was a way for us to roll back a live cluster down to etcd 2. And maybe that was just snapshot the new database and restored it in an old version, But I think it is possible. It's not a limitation of etcd.
Well, I wrote that thing, so it's a limitation of etcd. So that's why there's a hack. So for downgrade, there are several like issues. The first one is if you only want the data, that's easy. If you want to like do a live downgrade, that's hard because your cluster cannot communicate with each other. If you just want to like take everything off and dump the data and then load into the old database, that's easy.
Okay, yeah, that's probably what we're doing then.
Yeah, that's.
So here's another question that leads on to this, because etcd2 to etcd3 was a major data model change, right? And data, like the data storage model completely shifted. So is there any planned shifts in the future where we couldn't roll back a minor version?
So that's what we are working on right now, and we won't know the exact requirements for the manual version downgrade. There's a issue in etcd repo itself. If you are interested, please comment on it.
Could you link that into the notes?
Yeah, sure. I will do it later. Okay. Because the problem is like if you are running a higher version of etcd and it's use a new feature, and how are you going to roll back that feature? Are you going to just ignore it, or what are you going to do about the new features? And all when you introduce a new like data into etcd, what are you going to do with that new data?
Well, sometimes people run things, even newer versions, in compat mode of some kind, right? There's always like some legacy compat mode for minor version support is another option.
Yeah, there are some like options there. I just want to know the like what people think of it, because there will be limitations and we cannot solve all the problems for free.
So I think to go back to the meta argument, there's some level of support for downgrades, and we'll have to keep track of what that means with the next major release version. Is that a fair statement?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question. I mean, if we can support snapshot restore, right, wouldn't that solve the problem? Let's say everything is bad and upgrade didn't work, and the schema has changed dramatically during etcd upgrade. But if before the upgrade we did a backup and we provided guidance on how to restore, would that to the previous version, right, with the previous schema, wouldn't that solve the problem?
So I think the argument is like maybe you have a subtle bug, it's very like manual bug, and you hit it over time, and then your cluster cannot run anymore, and you don't want to hit that manual issue anymore, so you want to do a downgrades, and you still want to keep the delta from the like old version to the new version.
Yeah, I guess the question is like, is the failure mode that we're discussing here so bad that you can't even run the cluster to export the data from it?
I would say we're talking about an edge case, but edge cases in the law of large numbers will always occur, right? So.
Yeah, I don't want to rat hole on this too much. I just think that if we're listing out requirements, then downgrades, I think, would be a great requirement to have.
Yep.
I'm not sure if we can actually meet that requirement, but that's something I would love to see us build into the system, if not build an automated solution. It may not be possible to automate, right? But we should have a way to do downgrades.
Yeah, again, that works for etcd operator today if you only want to like recover the data. But if you want to do a live downgrade, it's not supported by etcd itself. So we need to solve that inside etcd first if you want to do a live downgrade.
Are there other requirements that folks had?
I'd like
I listed one. Like, so basically, if a member is deleted either manually or through some kind of failure, the solution should be able to recover and basically maintain quorum. So maintaining a desired state of the cluster throughout.
I have a question. Where's the requirement doc? Is that the same doc, the design doc that you wrote?
No, we're flushing out requirements into the meeting minutes, and I think I'll copy and paste crib and maybe reorder into the other doc, and maybe the other issue too.
I would like to see some sort of recovery from power off. So total failure of all nodes. That implies that we don't get into edge cases, right? If we can survive that, I feel like we can survive a lot.
But that's like disaster recovery, right? That's like full on data center disaster recovery.
That's a little bit different if you really think about self-hosted etcd, because your API server depends on etcd to run, and your etcd depends on Kubernetes to start, and your Kubernetes depends on API server to start. So when you have a total power off, so nothing can start because there's a circular dependency there. So I think that's a requirement if we want to do self-hosted etcd.
I mean, that's what the checkpointer is for, right?
Yes, that's what the checkpointer is made for. But I mean, that's a good requirement. And that's the difference between like a self-hosted etcd and the external etcd.
Yeah, and as someone, I think that's a good point. And I just want to draw a distinction there between disaster recovery and power outages. As someone who's like run a hosting company in a data center before, I've definitely lost power to all my servers a bunch of times. I didn't consider it a real disaster. It wasn't the same sort of disaster like, oh, the data center's flooded or it's on fire. So yeah, just being, and if you're running on Raspberry Pis, then you might want to be able to move them from one room to another. So it's more of a fundamental requirement than.
Well, that's you can consider power off and migration, right? Like those are two possible things, but like yes, I can delineate between the two scenarios. I don't want to conflate them too much.
So there are a few cases even for power off, right? So the first case is your power off part of your like cluster is like you have 3 master nodes with power off 1. That's not even like disaster, and you don't even need checkpoint to make it work, right? Another case is you power off all of your machines. That's where checkpoint takes into place. And even for like recovery, there are several cases. So the first case is you lose column, that's a disaster recovery. But if you just lose one etcd member when you have 3, that's not a like disaster recovery. So etcd operator can just handle it by like deleting a member and adding a new member in, right? So like even for recovery, there are several cases if we want to be accurate.
I've added, is that the right time to discuss those things? Like, I've added one edge case that we encountered. I'm not sure if it's a requirement. It's basically when you upgrade the cluster, we've seen many times because of the Docker issues, like for example, some containers could, just lock in for various reasons. And basically that results in a certain amount of nodes not being upgraded, just operating system issues or anything like that. So it will be nice if design somehow provided some guidance on how to get from that state, either continuing the upgrade, like manually rekicking the dealt nodes or doing something with that. Because that's being counted quite a lot.
So that's actually, it's pretty important to like operate etcd, because if you have locked down etcd members, then your cluster is in a degraded mode. And if you lose one member, maybe you will have to go into the disaster recovery mode because you lose column. So for etcd operator, for our implementation, it does periodically health checking. So if it feels that one member is not healthy for like 10 seconds, like you can set the threshold, it will just delete the member and add a new member in.
I put in something about recovery from partial. I think we have a good list here. I just wanted to do one more, unless anyone else has any more, because there's other stuff on the agenda now. The discovery, like, is that going to be something which we think is part of this, or is that going to be a separate system which this will depend on? Like, do we expect, like, there are 2 ways to do discovery, right? One of them is to say, oh, we have etcd. It did discovery somehow, so we can use etcd for discovery. The other one of which is to say, there's a discovery system and this operator plugs into it. I don't know whether people have a view. Should we say like discovery ?
Do you mean discovery for the API service or the EDC?
This is just etcd.
Okay.
Peers, I guess.
So the etcd operator actually use Kubernetes to discover its peers.
Right.
So that's for self-hosted etcd.
Right. I think it's an important requirement. Like whatever we have has to do that, right? That's what differentiates the etcd operator from something simpler, right? Is it takes care of discovery of etcd.
Yeah, it needs to discover itself.
But doesn't etcd have something like TLS bootstrap for itself, like in standalone mode?
Sorry, say it again.
doesn't etcd have some TLS bootstrap kind of?
Well, yeah, it can bootstrap itself, but then like your other SID members needs to be able to discover it to join the cluster.
Yeah, I see.
How does this sound? We have a fair list of requirements. Are there other ones that people want to vet for this time right now? I mean, once, twice.
I haven't had time to catch up on this, but yeah, looks good to me.
I think what we can do is we can put this into an issue, and there's already the self-hosting issue with the etcd operator in the kubeadm repo, and we can refine this list, and we can also dovetail it into the document as we change over time. But I don't think we should make sure that we enumerate any changes that we want to, or any PRs that we want to, that it covers certain items, and we also list down what are hard requirements and what are soft or nice to have, right?
Yeah, I'd love to see a proposal, like not only in an issue, but that we list all these things, the design we agreed on. For example, in the kubeadm repo as a proposal.
That seems reasonable to me.
It makes it easier to review as well and comment on, right?
Sounds good. Just to get, just to ask, sort of take a step back and ask a little bit of context around this discussion. What are people's expectations for self-hosted etcd landing in the work that SIG-cluster-lifecycle does? In terms of, is this something we're looking at in time frame for 1.8, or is it later? Does it dovetail with the HA proposal and the upgrades proposals?
It dovetails with both. I had not originally intended to work on it this cycle, but Jamie had cycles and was interested in, taking a stab at it. I think I do agree that perhaps we should take a minor step back, but also allow the prototyping. So as a SIG, we might want to have a defined mechanism by which we want to add the ability for people to hack on things. We don't need to incorporate them right away, right? We can always defer. But
it's totally cool for people to hack on things that they're interested in doing. I mean, I wouldn't try and stop anyone doing that. I'm just curious about where we see this landing and when, sort of rough timescale wise.
Yeah, I don't think it's at least not for 1.7. Maybe for 1.8 in like author. And
yeah,
I think we should focus on making self-hosting work. I mean, it has been broken for like 2-3 months.
Yes. How can we do that?
So, and I've collected some details later in the agenda. So that's like priority number one. It's really cool with self-hosted etcd, and which makes us probably able to do a better AJ story for bare metal. So it's important, but I don't think for in a really near time frame, like having something stable. But we could maybe have a fork or something, a well-known fork somewhere. In the meantime, maybe Jamie's or whatever. There was some pushback from others in the community for merging things as is right now with the dependencies. So like the GoDep ones, and should this TPR stuff under CoreOS, the CoreOS repo, should this live inside Core and so forth? This will be easier to deal with after we moved kubeadm out its own repo.
So it sounds like we're in pretty violent agreement on all topics.
One note on the fork. We kind of did that with kubeadmin in our initial development. And one problem that I kind of saw with this was we ended up kind of pushing in a bunch of code all at once because the fork developed and there was about 5,000 lines of code that all entered Kubernetes code base at once. So I would just request that once we finally do merge the fork, we do it incrementally in reviewable chunks.
So we should try not to merge it in a mad rush at the last minute, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought of it as like an experimental playground or something that we could use for testing this stuff out, and then we have someone's gonna write the proposal to the Kubernetes repo, and there we can get all the details outlined, and then take it in steps.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
I also think I don't think we need an explicit sort of SIG managed place for these experiments to happen. I think it's fine for it to just happen in the completely natural sort of GitHub style of some work happens in someone's fork. That person can give other people access to push to that fork if they want to collaborate on it. That's all good.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it can still be the same PR that exists right now. That's totally fine.
Cool.
Then it's really visible to others as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Shall we move on? I mean, we're going to come back to self-hosting still broken later in the agenda. So shall we push on through the other items? Sorry, I can't pronounce this. Talk about E2E's issue 218.
That's actually my last name, Lucas.
Oh, okay. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Luke, how's it going? Hey, that's Sasha.
Hey, Sasha.
Last week, I started digging into end-to-end testing framework and adding CNI plugin support. And basically, there are a couple of pull requests and flags. I know that Jamie did some work. I also used his work to basically test the Flannel CNI plugin, right? So I'm just trying to understand who should we ping to get this pull request going. Because there are a couple of pull requests to test infra. There's pull requests for, I know Jamie sent PR for Kubernetes Anywhere and test infra, and we also need to put some docs anywhere. Do you know how can we, who should review that?
Me or Jacob Beecham, Pipe Jacob on GitHub, can take a look.
All right.
Sorry, I saw those open and I haven't had time to look at them, but I'll put them on my list of things to do.
All right. And one more question: where should we put docs? So, for example, I wrote a guide on end-to-end testing for kubeadmin, kind of hacking guide. Where's the right place to put those things?
Development docs developer docs go in Kubernetes/community GitHub repository. There's it's either in docs devel, where we kind of put our developer-oriented docs.
So they're not a kubeadmin local. That's what you're saying. They should be in Kubernetes devel, basically.
Is the target audience just for people working on kubeadmin EDE tests?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd be reasonable to stick those in a kubeadmin repository then, because it's not something that needs wide visibility to everyone working on Kubernetes.
Okay. Alrighty. All right. So I think the quick status updates. I think we could wrap it up even this week if we can get those PRs going to get CNI Flannel tests right within the standard flow, at least for Flannel as a start, and then we can add more as it. We'll have the framework to edit those. If someone has any suggestions on how to improve tests, by the way, I have some cycles to work on tests, just general all sorts of testing. So just throw issues my way if you want something to be tested in kubeadmin. I'll just try to help with my team, okay?
I have a long list.
Could you test self-hosting and then fix it?
Yeah, I could. Anyways, just
that would be really cool.
Yeah, I'm warming up, so I'm open to whatever you feel like should be tested and fixed. Just send stuff my way, okay?
Nice, thank you. Okay, so I think the next item on the agenda is Lucas, unless there's anything else on that item.
No, we're good.
Cool.
Cool. Yeah, so a couple of items. Let's see. Tim mentioned on Slack a week ago, less than a week ago, maybe, that he wanted to edit some labels in the Cubase repo, which is he obviously should have access to. But at least I can't give him access to that. I think it's Robert.
I was just looking over the teams. So I can't tell what it means to promote someone to maintainer, and I'm a little bit leery of doing that because I'm worried I'm giving broader permissions than I think I am. But both Mike and I can add people to the group.
If there's a bot, I mean, like if we have bot labeling in place on this repo, I didn't see the bots like auto doing stuff on this repository. That's another issue. If we had that auto tooling, we might not have to give broader permissions, right? But there's plenty of folks who on this call who are already maintainers across a number of other areas that know the jurisprudence. So.
And also, I think you can actually request to join a team. So, and that sends the maintainers a notification or an email. So, yeah, happy to add you or anyone. Yeah, just send me a Slack or something next time you want to add somebody, Lucas.
Yeah, cool. Also, our SIG-cluster-lifecycle team on GitHub. Right now, it's me, Derek McQuay, and Robert in all these teams. I think it would be beneficial if we could get more than 3 persons, because people will use or are using SIG-cluster-lifecycle bugs, SIG-cluster-lifecycle feature requests, PR reviews, proposals, etc. And they think they're targeting the right people, but they're going to print 3 once. So if we could get more,
actually this up a while ago, trying like maybe when the group
but
created,
still,
but then no one really pushed forward and started adding their names. So yeah, I always get the emails and I try to ping people who I think are relevant to them. But it would be nice if those pings would hit people who, more people could see them.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe even Mike or someone. Well, you could just request, access, as we said, the folks who want to be in the team. Exactly, yeah. So,
are we making use of those GitHub tags? Do you see a lot of notifications coming in, or do you get subscribed to a lot of issues or PRs based on being a member of those teams? Are people using those aliases?
I wouldn't say a lot, but I would say it definitely happens.
I always use the aliases for everything in the project.
Yeah, I certainly use them for other SIGs, so hopefully they are using them for us as well.
Yeah, exactly. So that have happened a couple of times, and it would be cool to get more people into this list. Feel free to request access and add yourself. Cool. And then we have the certificate phase by Fabrizio, a pull request there. It's a really good one, but I haven't had time to review it fully. It's a couple of hundred of lines, so has taken me some days. Have other stuff to do as well, but I'll look at it and preview as soon as possible. I think I saw Fabrizio here somewhere. Yeah, cool. So that's underway.
Yeah, thank you for the contribution. It's really exciting to see new people contributing, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for all. It is a real fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and then we have self-hosting is still broken. The problem right now is late in the 1.6 cycle. As we know, we switched to using switched the CNI provider to using a status hook in the kubelet, and that had a consequence that the node is marked not ready when CNI is uninitialized, right? So, and when a node is marked not ready, it's unschedulable. And this is kind of, this, as we know, broke 1.6, the 1.6.60 release. And we just did the fast hacketing there to not check if the node is ready, just see that it's registered. But still, when we're self-hosting, we want to first start up the new self-hosted API server. That works well because daemon sets aren't using the scheduler. But then we want to deploy the scheduler as a deployment and the controller manager. And there we hit some problems because the scheduler can't schedule pods to a not ready node. And the only node that exists is not ready because CNI is uninitialized. So this is a problem, and it's breaking self-hosting at the moment. And there is a possible fix, and it's probably going to be merged for 1.7, but it still needs work. The first thing to do is to make the node controller. We should make the node controller in the controller manager taint all nodes with their conditions. So basically, if the CNI network plugin is initialized, the node will automatically get network not ready, some kind of taint.
Isn't that super hacky though on conditions? Because there's a lot of conditions.
Yeah, there is, and the proposal is that every condition get its own taint.
So can we take a step back and talk about breaking the circular dependency here? It seems to me like what we're saying is that, and correct me if I've misunderstood this, but what we're saying is that we need to be able to deploy a daemon set that contains the CNI network before the nodes are considered ready, because the CNI network isn't ready. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the current state, yes, but that's not how it should be.
Of course, no, I completely understand. Yes, I'm just trying to understand what the current state is.
Yeah.
So to me, it feels like we need to we need to introduce a more granular concept of readiness. We need to have ready to have a network deployed to me, and I'm ready to have workloads deployed to me.
There's a big, long-standing gripe that I've had for, I don't know how long I've been working on this project, 2.5 years, about having an actual written down state machine for the kubelet. Right? If you had an explicit state that outlined this, which is kind of what you're proposing, that would alleviate this problem versus, if we marked every possible condition, which is all the edges, versus having a state, that's a lot of edges, right?
Yeah, so the proposal is that the node controller will create taints from the conditions, and the scheduler, well, any workload that you want to schedule must tolerate those taints if you want to schedule on them. But the problem is we have to keep backwards compatibility, and the scheduler will, in 1.8, I think it was proposed, stop looking at the not ready. Right now it filters not ready nodes away from the scheduling, but it will change behavior to have those in the list of schedulable nodes and just look at the taints instead. That's kind of the high level proposal.
This is probably like a separate SIGs discussion, right? But like, I wonder about like a magic taint, like tolerates not ready, that then is indicated. You know, it's not nice, but is this SIG scheduling that's driving this, or is there?
From the issue, it looks like a conglomeration of scheduling and node.
Yeah.
Is there anything we can do for that?
It's problematic. I don't know. I still have to talk to David Oppenheimer a little bit more. I was hoping that we could get, the new behavior of the scheduler to support scheduling on not ready nodes into 1.7 behind maybe a feature flag or something, because that's coming in 1.8 probably anyway. But
question.
Yeah.
Can we start, let's say, like a special stop plugin that always starts up and then switch that? So we will never be, so we start with host network plugin, which does nothing, right? Everything is ready, and then we switch it, where that's not possible. As a workaround, I mean.
So what do you mean? We create a fake network first?
Yeah.
In case we can't do anything else, it may be the last resort, but I mean, I think that the scope of the SIG is to make Kubernetes better, more than create workarounds for our tool. So that's why I've been trying to look into this. I'll still have to update the issue with more details and so forth, and clear out the details, like what's going in for 1.7, what's for 1.8, and so forth. But it's blocking us now.
Yeah, it's blocking us right now. It's blocking the very next thing we want to do. What about, like, why? Okay, we probably need to move on to the other agenda items in a second, but the last idea that I want to express on this point is why does CNI network is ready count towards node is ready?
That's something that was designed long ago, like for 1.0, that if one condition is falsy, then the full node condition is falsy and it's unschedulable. And that's 1.0 behavior, unfortunately. So
yeah, I'm just wondering why, like, what happens if you schedule to a server that doesn't have, or a node that doesn't have CNI ready yet?
It doesn't get scheduled there. But
you can bypass the scheduler, though, right? You can pin a pod to a node. So the question is, will the kubelet actually honor that and try to run it? And is it just disabling the scheduler, or will the kubelet refuse to honor
the sync loop will fail, so the pod actually won't start unless it's on the host network. So if it is a host network pod, it will be able to start.
Well, that's the behavior we want, isn't it? Because you can then deploy a daemon set that's running on the host network that implements CNI.
I think if we take a little bit step back, I think one workaround for us could be to set node name and bypass the scheduler, or just create a bare pod or something initially.
Which component are we talking about that we want to run?
The self-hosted scheduler and the self-hosted control manager. So it's not a problem to run those per se, but it's a problem to get them scheduled on the unready node.
And the
those
node is
actually
unready
run on the host.
because the CNI network hasn't been deployed yet. Is that right?
Yeah.
And those run on
we're
the
waiting for
host
the
network.
self-hosted. Sorry.
Yeah, they run. We could make them run on the host network. Yeah. That's not a problem. That's what we've been doing so far. But we somehow have to like bypass the scheduler until it works the way it should work. I should be able to tolerate the node network isn't ready. Then we have a little bit of flakiness as well. In case we would get it working, we'll hit this one. And I think it might be a SIG API machinery issue. It's just like a generic API server one that it reports to help us that I'm ready. And then we're trying to deploy some deployment or whatever, and it fails. So this happens if from current 1.6 master, like 1.6.3, it's easily reproducible. Yeah.
Sorry, Lucas. Why not deploy the self-hosting controller as a static pod and then make it change itself?
Sorry, that was very hard to hear. It cut somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, sorry, Fabrizio. I think your internet connection or something is struggling. The internet is struggling.
Yes, I try again. Why not deploying the self-hosting controller as a static pod and then make it change itself as a deployment?
Currently, first, initially, it's a static pod, and the self-hosting phase in kubeadm basically turns it into a deployment for the scheduler and controller manager, and that's okay. That's what's working. But this specific issue was that the static pod hosted scheduler, or the scheduler in general, doesn't allow scheduling on not ready nodes. So it's kind of a problem. But the general static pod self-hosted migration, that works.
Sorry, I was going to say I linked in the notes another issue that's related to the flakiness issue about the API server. I actually turn off health checks right now because that becomes problematic when we're using the file lock to coordinate between the real API server and the static API server, both during the pivot and during checkpointing. So I kind of outlined in that issue, but it is something that when you introduce the checkpointer is something we're going to probably need to address somehow.
Yeah, and also, I don't know about RBAC. Is it behind RBAC right now?
APIs.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're about to run out of time. I just want to make sure that other items on the agenda that people think are important get 30 seconds. Can I also suggest that I think this self-hosting issue is really important. People who are interested in it, please, I encourage you to carry on chatting on Slack about it after the meeting. And anyone who's interested in volunteering to work on it, please do make sure that you talk to the right people to get involved. So let's just run through these last few items quickly. Who will bring Bootstrap tokens to beta? Lucas, you said you had a proposal up soon?
Yeah, I just have to commit and push. It's basically some lines in the Bootstrap token proposal, the cluster discovery thing, that's changing from alpha to beta. But that's not a huge deal. Mostly it's about implementation and testing, EDE testing, so forth. And I think Joe has volunteered some months ago, but
Yeah.
I haven't seen him lately either. So yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
it would be beneficial to get into 1.7 if possible.
I'll talk to him about it.
Cool.
Sorry.
And then there was a friendly ping for Robert on a PR. Please consider yourself pinged. And then Tim, you had a point at the end there.
Right now, we currently pass secrets via file, but there's the notion of wanting to push secrets as tokens as secrets, and certs as secrets. But there's broader authorization questions that folks will want to take a look at or think about, because we're pushing everything into a single namespace. And for RBAC rules, that kind of means there's multiple owners, and we have multiple people who could potentially own those certificates. So it's just a broader question that I think we need to start thinking about as we start to push, certs into actual secrets.
Yeah. It might be, I think I said it in some issue somewhere, that it might be beneficial to put them in a cube secret or something really cube internal don't touch namespace or something, because cube system is kind of a catch-all for like CNI network providers and logging things, everything you want to hide from the user basically. And this is another thing with cluster internal stuff. Cool.
Okay, so out of respect for everyone's time, let's call the meeting to a close. Thank you everyone for a constructive meeting. Look forward to talking again next week. Please let's continue the conversation on Slack and let's get self-hosting working. Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers.